Welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Devin DeCuna, joined alongside by Daniel Davis. Finding a job in today's economy can be stressful at times. However, you can get results with proven strategies that are set to revolutionize the way people seek employment. On the show today is Donald Asher, author of Cracking the Hidden Job Market. Thanks for coming on the show today, Don.
Devin, my pleasure to be with you.
My first question is, someone like me who's struggling to get a job, I think my biggest problem is trying to make myself stand out to some of these employees. And my question to you is, what are some of your top ways to get a job right now?
Well, the reason I wrote the book, Cracking the Hidden Job Market, is because about the only way to get a job at all right now is in the hidden job market. Because once something is posted, it's drawing 300, 400, 1,000 applications. And so you just can't win in that kind of competition. So you have to get in the hidden job market where the competition is extremely light, where you would normally be applying against, say, a dozen people or fewer. So the book is about techniques to crack into the hidden job market. I think step one, you have to go out and look for jobs without regard to whether somebody is hiring or not, or whether they have a posted opening. Does that make sense, Devin?
Yes, it does, sir. Also, one of the things I was wondering is I'm about to graduate college in a couple of months, and one of the things that concern me is I hear the percentage of college graduates finding a job in today's economy is rough. Why is that, and why are employees looking past these people?
Well, college graduates are in a tight bind right now because they usually don't have very much experience. And frankly, you can hire someone that's got 3 years of experience, is proven, for the same rate that you could pay a beginning new hire out of college. So this is putting a lot of pressure on new hires out of college. The data are shocking. There's a new study out by Northeastern University professor that says that 50% of college graduates who find jobs are taking a job that does not require a college degree. That's a tremendous failure rate. 50% of them didn't need to go to college at all to get the job that they got after college. That's very high. I have other research that's a little older that said it was 1 out of 3, and prior to that it was 1 out of 6, but right now it's 1 out of 2. So why is it? It's simply because employers don't have to take a risk on a new hire that's unproven, because they can hire someone with 3 to 5 years of experience for the same money.
You know, Donald, if I may, it's really quite interesting when you take a look at the way things used to be back in the nuclear family age after World War II, where a continuing education was something that was very highly respected. But this day and age, it seems like a high school diploma is almost enough, but yet they still pitch higher education, generally speaking. And there are a lot of young men and women that are going into debt that, for the most part, as you've been saying, are having a tough time finding any kind of meaningful work that pay well enough to get themselves out of a situation like that. Why are we still following an old paradigm that just doesn't have the integrity, seemingly, as it used to?
Well, it's an interesting question, Daniel. I think a college degree still is a huge advantage. When you read studies like this one where the 50% of them are taking a job that does not require a college degree, that doesn't mean they keep that kind of job forever. It just means it's the first job they get out of school. So the college degree does come into play over time, and it does allow them to advance. But to answer your question, actually, Daniel, here's what I think. I think we lack an apprenticeship system in the United States where talented people that really either don't want to go to college or don't have a desire to go to college, or frankly even the capacity to go to college, they're not put on a legitimate career path. Well, they're kind of abandoned for themselves. So we have no apprenticeship program, and we have a really weak technology training program where someone could become a highly skilled technician, perhaps without learning about the Renaissance.
Don, in your book you say you don't like the term networking. Personally, I think networking is crucial for finding a job because you have to call these people and they're your references, but you say you don't like that. What's wrong with networking?
It's the term that I really object to. People hear the word networking and they think they have to find a really powerful person that knows them personally, someone in the family, someone they can lean on for a job. And so I think the term is abused enough that I want to retire it. I just want to change the word networking into the term talking to people. Because if you go in front of a group of job seekers, whether they're over 50 or just out of college, and you say, look, I want to teach you some techniques for talking to people that will get you a job. Then they sit up, they lean forward, they get their pencil out, and they're ready to take notes. You walk into that same group and you say, I'm here to teach you how to network. They look down, they hunch down, and they're like, I tried that, it didn't work. So I'm just trying to retire the term in favor of talking to people, because that's actually the point, and it takes away all of these concepts that people have that they have to connect with somebody at the vice presidential level and up, and they're thinking, well, I don't know anyone like that.
You know, something I was curious about is making my resume stand out to these employers. I just wanted to get your perspective. What did you do to make your resume stand out from other people, and what made your resume better than other people's?
That's a really complicated, it's a simple question with a very complicated answer. The first job I had out of college was actually teaching people how to find jobs. And the reason that I got that job was because I was such a profound failure at finding jobs. I had a suitcase full of resumes, I mean literally over 100 of them, all of which had failed. And I saw an advertisement, the worst way to find a job lead in the world, but I was young and dumb and had a lot of energy. So I called him up and I said, look, I want to come in, and I think I've got what it takes to do this job, helping people with their resumes and their career direction. So they said they would look at me, they would talk to me. So I went physically down to their office. So one of the things I did different than other people is I called them. I just looked at the ad and I said, I know who this is, and I called them. So I went down there and I stepped in the door, and I hadn't taken one step into this guy's office. He looks up and he says, forget it, I can't use you. And I was like, why? He said, because you're too young. No one will ever have faith in you. We work with people in the middle of their careers. You're just too young for this kind of work. Now, nowadays we would call that an illegal question or illegal comment, but he felt comfortable saying it. He thought he was going to throw me out. I was not that easy to throw out. I said, look, I came all the way down here. At least let me show you my work and give you my pitch, and if you don't want to take it, then that's fine. He said, okay, but make it quick. So I covered his desk entirely with resumes and cover letters. He had a couch next to him. I covered that with resumes and cover letters. And I said, all of these resumes are true, all of these resumes are different, and all of these resumes are me. I understand spin, and I know how to position and package somebody for different positions. And he looked at me kind of startled, and he said, leave them with me overnight, and I'll let you know tomorrow. And he called me the next day, and he gave me the job. But I stress, and you're going to love this, Devin, if you think about it for a moment, you realize that every single one of those resumes had failed. And that's how I got my first job in the career field.
You know, you have really a lot of interesting tools in your book. For example, the railroad track letter. Can you explain a little more about what that is?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to put in this book, it's not a big book, it's a quick book, it's a fast book, and it's designed for somebody that's already been in the job market, that's not, starting from scratch, that actually gets it. So I wanted to provide some tools that people could use to do their job search, because so many of the books say network. They don't tell you how. They say to call people, and they don't give you a script. So I put the actual tools that a person would use to crack through the monolith that an organization presents to the world. And the railroad track letter is a way to build a network of people who are going to feed you job leads. And the railroad track letter, it comes from that old concept, if you want to know when the train is coming, put your ear to the railroad track and you can tell if the train is coming. It's a way to get early information before a position is posted, before it's announced. And the railroad track letter, the beauty to it is the person you're writing to does not actually have to even respond. You simply write to them, and using the scripts in the book, you say, I'd like to add you to my inside list of people who are tipping me off on leads. If you don't want to be on this list, let me know and I'll take you off, but otherwise you'll hear from me about every 10 days. That's a thing in sales called an assumed close. So you're not giving them a chance to blow you off. You're really setting it up so they have to actually go to some effort to get off of your list.
Donald, I know also in your book, Cracking the Hidden Job Market, that you talk about the importance of informational interviewing, and I can certainly say from experience, back in my younger years that when I would call, I could actually cold call a potential employer right out of the yellow pages. And what I would do is I would simply say, I'm interested in pursuing a career in this area. Wondered if I might be able to come in, take about 5 to 10 minutes of your time to ask a couple of informational questions to find out more about this particular career. Sure, come on in. So, of course, when I showed up, I'm in a suit and a tie. I introduce myself cordially. Of course, I have, an information package where they can find out how to get in contact with me. It was really quite interesting that they would tell me over the telephone, well, we really don't have any positions available. Every single time I showed up, all of a sudden, miraculously, they had a position or they knew somebody else that did. Talk about the importance of doing informational interviews.
Wow, that's exactly what you're supposed to do.
And it was just something I came up with,
Great. And it'll have that effect every time. Once people get their eyes on you and they see some professionalism, they see some energy and some zeal. And, you don't have to have the best GPA and you don't have to go to the Ivy League. You just have to show up and have the right look and some energy and some zeal. And suddenly people will remember that, well, they're going to have this project coming up next month. Maybe they'll need somebody. And so this technique of using the informational interview, what it's doing is getting your physical body inside somebody's office, which that's hard to do. But I think it does something else too. I think that in particular young people are naive about so many of the opportunities that are out there. They don't know the name of the job. They don't have any clue about what the culture would be like, the barriers to entry, the keys to success. And so informational interviewing, not only does it get your body inside the office, but it also gives you that information that allows you to be more effective at seeking the job and then more effective at the job. But you pegged it right on. That's exactly what you do. It doesn't matter how nebulous the connection is. We went to the same school, 25 years apart. We go to the same church, but I don't believe anymore and I don't show up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how wide the spread is between you and that person. If you call them up and you connect and you say, we have this tenuous thread, and I'm interested in this field, would you have a moment just to give me some advice, ideas, then help me see if this is a direction I want to go in? And that's exactly what you do. And what I put in the book, Daniel, I'm sure you saw this, was the script for the questions that you ask. Because when you come in the door as an informational interviewer, you're the candidate. You have to interview them. And so I put that script in there because it's not in the interview books. If you read 25 interview books, they're all about how to be interviewed, not how to interview. So it's a little bit of a swap out.
There's a very important point that you're making because too often people will show up to an interview. They'll sit there and they'll answer all of the potential employer's questions. I was taught many years ago, it goes both ways, that he who asks the questions is the one that controls the interview. And too many times I think people try to sell themselves, and in some cases, sell themselves out to a job or a company that may not be a personal fit for them, so it wouldn't work in the first place. So the best way to find out, as you said, ask questions.
Exactly right. You want to be sure that this is a place you want to land. And asking questions can also help you structure the content flow so that you get to make your major points about your background. Some interviewers are not very good at it, and they'll skip over things that you think are important and germane for you to establish. And so by asking a few questions, you get to control that flow. And also, employers universally, if they look at you and say, well, that concludes our structured interview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. If you look at them and you say, I don't have any questions, then they think you're a total dud, your brain doesn't work, you're not curious, you don't like the job, you don't like the office, you don't like the interviewer. So it's critical just from a kind of a social point to have a few questions and show some curiosity.
Don, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that people are finding jobs through the Internet. I know the majority of applications I've filled out over the years have been on the web. Do you think this is going to be the way to find a job in the next few years?
Well, the interesting thing about the Internet is it's a medium. It's just, think of it as a medium. It's not a destination. It's just one channel that you get information and you give information. So if you think about it as a medium, you don't think, I'll get a job on the Internet. I'll use the Internet to get a job. And once you start to make that small, slight, but highly important transition, you'll start to see what a fantastic tool this is. Not for applying to posted openings at 4 o'clock in the morning in your pajamas, okay, which is what people are actually doing. So your computer, your laptop talks to their database, and their database generates a nice little note to you. Dear Don Asher, thank you so much for your application. We think it's very promising. We're going to compare it carefully to our openings, and we'll let you know. Okay, that's all computers. That's nothing. Nothing happened. You can do that thousands of times with no result. But the Internet is a fantastic device as a medium to reach out, find people, find out information, and access them. So the Internet is definitely here, the best tool you've got to find decision makers, get their email, contact them, and bust that wall, the monolith that stands between you and the opportunity. And you can do this with LinkedIn. Everybody in America that's a professional is on LinkedIn now. So LinkedIn and Facebook are just becoming part of the process. But it's not for applying for positions that are posted. That's the thing that's critically different about the approach that I'm espousing in my book. It's to use that medium to access people, identify, access, and communicate with people.
You know, one of the issues I would like to address, maybe for a Beyond 50 radio crowd who've been unemployed for a long term. What's your advice for them? They may be broke, depressed, and out of ideas and out of luck. What should they do?
Well, if somebody's been on the market for a long time, I want to be really clear. I can be kind of flip. I can be kind of aggressive. I in no way want to diminish the pain that is involved in being on the job market for a long time. It's discouraging. It interferes with concepts of identity and self-worth. It's painful. So, but to answer your question, there are specific things that someone can do that's been on the job market for a long time. First of all, you have to keep trying something new. If you're doing the same old thing over and over again, that's Einstein's definition of insanity, is to keep doing the same thing and expect suddenly a different outcome. So you have to try something new. Next, I want to talk about, because of the Beyond 50 radio crowd, I want you to look at your resume and say, when I look at this resume, can I tell how old this candidate is? And if the answer to that is yes, your resume is wrong. That's flat out the situation. I covered this in a book recently released called The Overnight Resume, The Fastest Way to Your Next Job. I covered how to do this. But basically, if you have 3 phone numbers on your resume, you've got a home phone, a cell phone, and a fax or something else, I promise you immediately everybody knows you're 45, 50, 60 years old. All the young people have only 2 identifying factors on there, one phone number, and it's always a cell number, and an email address, and it's not their work email address. So that's a sample of what can tell your age that you're not even aware of. Obviously, you take off all the experience that's more than 10 years old. Nobody cares what you did 15 years ago. And if your best days were 15 years ago, then they really don't care. So take all of that off, take the ages off of your degrees, and pretty soon you start to look unageable. Nobody can tell whether you're 32 or 52, and that's a perfect resume. So resume problems are a lot of this. Next thing you do, if you've been unemployed for over a year, you've got to get something on that resume now. So you'd have to do some consulting, do some volunteer work, get together with a buddy and start a barbecue stand on a street corner so that you can show that you have been doing something besides watching Oprah and drinking Budweiser beer in your bathrobe at 11 a.m. So that's some of the things that you do. But the other things that you do if you're on the market for a long time, you have to volunteer and you have to exercise, because those 2 processes are kind of like, I don't know what you would call this, they're like a self-fulfilling medicine, because the volunteering gets you a new network circle, and the exercise improves your mood, makes you look better, you feel better. So both of those things are fantastic for resolving the psychological challenges of being unemployed for a really long time.
Donald, I think you said one of the most valuable things that I have said to people over the years. When you find an area of interest that you want to be in, You spend as much time in there as you possibly can, regardless of whether you make money or not, because you truly show a strong desire and enthusiasm for the work, the career that you want to pursue. And that is just invaluable when it comes to creating contacts, networks, and leads.
Exactly. Your endeavors to pursue this via either education or volunteering give you those network connections that you need to get back in the job market, and they give you those projects that you may need, some kind of a consulting project or just a pro bono piece that you do. It gives you some stuff to put on that resume so the last job is not 2008.
You know, Don, one of the things I was wondering is, what are some of the mistakes you notice that job seekers make, and what advice would you give them to correct or prevent?
The biggest mistake that job seekers make is only applying for posted openings. That's the biggest mistake. And when you apply for only posted openings, you're actually applying, the part of the job market you're involved in is the smaller part. I went back and reviewed the research on the hidden job market all the way back to the 1960s. And basically the hidden job market, study after study, shows that it falls between 55 and 80% of the job market. So between 55 and 80% of jobs trade hands in the hidden job market. And so if you're applying for posted openings, you're in the small half of the job market. But worst of all, and that's not the biggest problem actually, the worst problem is this: you're facing horrific competition. If you're applying for posted openings, so are gazillions of other people. Just to give you some numbers, Devin, that'll give you some idea. A church put in a church bulletin in Milwaukee a 2-line little note that said, "The lunchroom is looking for lunchroom monitors for the grade school. Apply to Sister Susan." 200 people applied for that thing. Out of a 2-line ad in a church bulletin, 200 people applied. A bar put a bartender ad on Craigslist. 400 people applied for a bartender's job listed on Craigslist. Once you start to hear these numbers, and I could tell you 50 more of them, I'll tell you one more because it was on the front page of the New York Times. A trucking company put up an ad on Friday at noon on Career Builder, and then they went off for the weekend. They came back on Monday, and by noon they had 575 applications for an administrative job at a trucking company in New Jersey. They pulled it down on Monday at noon. But those are the kinds of numbers that you're facing when you apply online. Just applying for online posted openings, horrific competition. And there's one more little problem. It's a psychological problem. Humans, and I mean all of us, the best among us too, I mean the smartest and brightest, as well as people that are not that into their careers, all of them have what I call a tremendous capacity to delude themselves that they're perfect for a position. I don't know where this comes from, but people have it bad. They'll have no background in something, and they'll look at it and they'll say, "I could do that. If they would just interview me, they would see it." And so they'll apply. They'll spend the 20 minutes to customize the letter and do all that uploading. But the fact is, if you're not perfect for a position, you're never going to get it by applying to a posted opening. So the whole book, Devin, the whole book is the answer to that question. How do you do it otherwise? And so that's what the book is about, techniques to get you out of that stack of 500 resumes and into a stack of 0, 1, 2 resumes.
Now, let's take a look at the resume in and of itself. I think there are a lot of times people put too much importance on the resume by simply submitting it, thinking, "Oh, this is the best thing that somebody's ever going to read." They don't bother to follow through with a phone call whatsoever. I've put out 10 or 15 resumes last week. 3 weeks later, I haven't gotten a single call.
Yeah,
how relevant is a resume, really? I tell people it's a calling card that you leave behind after you've shook somebody's hand face-to-face.
Perfect. That's exactly right. I wrote 3 different books on how to write resumes, and I'm a big fan of resumes, but I got to tell you, I agree with you. Leave it after you leave. That's what the best use of a resume is. I'd say don't use it for networking, because when people see a resume, they're kind of genetically programmed to send it to HR or delete it. They see these all day, every day. Oh, resume. Okay, send it to HR. Oh, resume. Just delete that. Okay, so by the way, it's almost equal effect. Whether they delete it or send it to HR, it's equal effect. So
it disappears in the ethos.
It's gone either way. So by taking the resume out of the equation, you make people deal with you. If you send them a query email and no resume, you're going to get a higher response rate than if you send them an email with a resume. So put that thing in your back pocket and only pull it out when it's needed. Now, resumes can solve lots of problems. And I think it's important to know how to write one well, but a bad resume used often is massively better than a perfect resume used seldom.
You know, Don, one of the quotes that stood out to me while reading the book is people have to do something different to find a job. What are some of the different things people have to do?
Well, step one, they have to realize that applying for posted openings should take up no more than 20% of their time. That's the first step. They have to own that. Until they own it, they're going to keep doing it. So they have to really look coldly in the face of the fact that that is not a successful strategy for 99% of adults. Now, maybe I should throw a bone here. The 1% of adults it does work for. If you went to a top accounting firm, school, and then you got a job in a top accounting firm and you're applying for another job at another top accounting firm, then all of this online stuff works for you because you're kind of the perfect candidate. But most people are not perfect at all. So the question that you asked is, what are they supposed to do? Step one, back away from that process of applying online. Step two, decide a particular target that you would like to get, a type of job that you imagine you would be good at and that your background supports. Step three, identify a lot of organizations that have that kind of opportunity. And then step four, start applying for positions at those companies without regard to whether they're advertising an opening. Forget the opening. You're saying, look, I want to be the junior account executive for European sales because I speak French and German and Italian. And you go out and you beat on a particular type of opportunity, whether they're hiring or not. And what you'll find is what Daniel found when he went out and walked into people's offices, suddenly there is an opportunity. You walk in the door, I speak Italian, French, and German, boom, suddenly we do need a second account exec. We're trying to increase our sales in Europe. The guy that's doing it, he only speaks English. He's not getting it done. You look like our new junior account rep. That's an example of what happens. Organizations pick up talent. And so you've got to get in the door, say this is what I'm after, and show some talent, and you will get employed. And you'll be employed probably by a place that has no posted openings whatsoever that have anything to do with your interests.
There is a piece of gold there, Donald, that you also brought up as we've been hearing it throughout the course of the segment, is the fact that what you say to people. So let's hit that right on the nail here because you say this in the book. Elevator speech.
Elevator speech is what you're after and why that's a good fit in about 3 or 4 sentences. And the old concept of an elevator speech, it was kind of a cliche in MBA programs, and I teach in a lot of MBA programs. You step onto an elevator and you look over, and there's Bill Gates, okay, and you've got 3 floors to make your pitch to Bill Gates. So that's where the idea of an elevator speech or an elevator pitch came from. But when you're using these techniques that I'm describing, you're going to be doing this mostly through email, but some through phone. You have to say to someone that's not particularly interested and is very busy, in 3 or 4 sentences, who you are and what you have to offer. I have a funny story about that, Daniel. I had a client that we did her elevator speech. We developed it together, and she happened to be down at Intel in Oregon to visit a girlfriend for lunch. And she looked at the badge of the guy she was riding the elevator with, and her badge said guest. She looks over at his badge and said VP. I thought, this is too sweet. I'm on an elevator. There's a VP. I'm going to make my pitch. So she did, and she extracted an appointment out of this guy between floors 1 and 6 of an Intel building somewhere outside Portland, Oregon. So it still works in elevators. And I love that story because she thought, what's the harm? What's the cost? I'll pitch you. I'll see what happens.
Exactly.
You know, Don, this is just out of my own curiosity, but how did you become such an ace at creating your own little niche in the marketplace?
I don't know. I think it's because I understand sales. I went through sales training myself. I sold advertising before I got my own company going. And I think that I saw that the sales model was a new approach to job change. And there's a lot of people that I think have this idea, but they don't have the skill set to go with it. My father was a serial entrepreneur. I watched him. I grew up at his knee watching how he, for example, before he would go to a meeting, he would talk to my mother, and he would talk even to us. He was like, there's going to be these 5 people at the meeting. Here's what their motivations are going to be. This is how long the meeting's going to run. This is who's going to appear to be in charge. This is who's going to actually be in charge. I grew up in a house where this was conversation in the evening. So I guess I understood sales, deal-making, and closing agreements. And so one of the first articles that I wrote when I began to write about the career field was Job Search Tips from Top Sales Pros. I still remember the title because it had a lot of alliteration in it. And the dang thing won a national award. That article was a top 10 Dow Jones award for career writing. And it was because of the sales tips. And so basically, I think I have had only one skill set my whole life, and I have just been able to merchandise that skill set over and over again. I've tried to take all of the mystery out of it, I've tried to make it mechanical. Like, here's a script. Try this next time. And I think that's what people need. You don't need sales training. You don't need to go to a workshop and have somebody yelling at you and pointing their finger in your face. You don't need to have one of those situations where people say, call 10 friends right now and try to sell them a water filter. We don't need that. What we need is scripts that regular people can use to change their job search outcome. And that's what's in the book. Cracking the Hidden Job Market. It's just exactly what it's about. How do you use these techniques when you're not a salesperson, when you're a regular person?
Donald, if you could, please give out a website where people can find out more about how they can be helped by what you have to offer.
Well, it's super easy, actually. It's www.donaldasher.com. My full name, donaldasher.com. Everybody calls me Don, but the website is donaldasher.com. And we have a bunch of stuff on there. We have a Stone Soup Club that I'm trying to promote people to create their own job clubs. I have a Stone Soup Club starter kit I'll send to anybody. Just email me and say, hey, I want the Stone Soup Club starter kit. I'll scoot it right back to you and I'll teach you how to start your own job club. And I have a white paper on how to negotiate salary. Well, we negotiate salary 4 or 5 times in our lifetime, and if you do it right, you make thousands and thousands of dollars more money. And so that's the kind of stuff that's on the website, and I hope people will take a look at it.
Well, Donald, we really appreciate you coming on the program today. Devin, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, I just wanted to say that this was a really good book to read. It definitely taught me a lot because I'm a young guy. So now that I have all this knowledge gained all this knowledge from the book, I can go out and apply it, and hopefully it'll actually work this time and I can get a job.
Well, Devin, in the media world, all jobs change hands like this. Nobody's going to say, you're not going to find a posted opening, radio show seeking talented intern. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to go get it.
Yeah.
Or do what I did, just create your own show.
Do it that way.
Roll the sleeves up and find advertisers. That's how it works.
Do it that way.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being on the program today, Donald. It's donaldasher.com, correct?
Yep, that's right. Daniel and Devin, thanks so much for the time to be with you.
You bet. The book is Cracking the Hidden Job Market.